just want to share what happened this morning in a meditation to give an understanding of the profundity that meditating can bring us, and the clarity that it can bring us, and the way it undoes all the illusions of this world. Because we're in a very kind of illusionary state at this moment in time, where there's a lot of confusion, a lot of fear, a lot of doubt, a lot of concern about the future, a lot of concern about the future of the planet and humanity surviving, and then this pandemic and the virus and all the stuff that this is bringing up, and you know, it's all being fueled by media and governments and politics and who's right and who's wrong. So there's a lot of confusion and a lot of deception happening at the moment. So I woke up this morning and there was a fear in my mind. Ultimately, it was well, not ultimately, but it was a fear about not having enough money again. And this is quite a common occurrence with myself, because I don't work and I'm not working for money. So I often face this same insecurity within myself. So rather than going out and getting busy and making money and get a job and do all these things that we're taught to do, you know, we must work for a living, we must work to survive, we've got to make money, you know, all these kind of things. And if we don't, we end up in poverty and we end up sick and we end up basically seeing ourselves in hell, in a state of hell. But this is not true, because this is only the illusion of fear that the fear is bringing to us, that is true. And then if we don't do this, this and this, and it's always projected outside ourselves, do something, always do something, get busy, make work, make money, buy something, you know, make some kind of something to make myself feel happy, you know, whatever it is. Buy another handbag, buy another pair of shoes, buy a car, buy a motorbike, buy a house, move to another place. All these kind of things is always projected outside. But what happens when you go into the fears through a meditation process is that you start to see who you are in truth, the truth about who you are, not the illusionary self, which is the body is a reflection of an illusory self. It's not the totality of who we are. It is much more of a reflection, and it's being seen through the mind, and it's being projected through the mind. And the world we see is not the totality of the world. It's a tiny, tiny fraction of reality. And it's more like a shadow than light. So the world we're seeing is really a kind of form of shadow play, a play on shadows and darkness, which is really the meaning of a dream. So the meditation this morning was that I started to see myself not as my body. I was very clear that I wasn't my body. I could see that if I took my hand off, I'm still me, I'm still here. If I took my arm off, I'm still who I am. If my legs disappeared tomorrow or now, I would still be who I am. And then I realized through this process that every part of this body was not who I am. And because of that, whatever this body is revealing to me, all the senses, whatever they're showing to me, is not the reality of who I am as well. So this is also an illusion of who I am, and it's being made real because it's coming through the body, and because I've associated myself to the body, and the body has become my personality, my identity. I have this understanding that this is reality. But then this morning in this meditation, I could see that I was not the body, and that the physicalness of the body and the physicalness of the world was not real, because it was just my senses showing it to me as real. But in truth, it wasn't real. And And therefore I saw myself outside the body, outside the physical, and in a much greater, expanded reality, which was completely non-physical, and it was timeless because it was expanding out into the universe, beyond time, beyond space. And because of that, I had this realization that the fear was just the fear of leaving the body, the fear of leaving the body identity, and all that the body identity is we've taught to ourselves in forgetfulness, because when we entered into the body we came into a place of not knowing, into a place of forgetfulness. We forgot who we were, we forgot who we are, and therefore we've learnt everything, we've taught ourselves everything. And in teaching ourselves from a place of ignorance, really, from a place of not knowing, we've taught ourselves mistakes. We've projected onto ourselves attributes of being physical and attributes of the world that we are believing in. But what you can understand eventually is that the mind or seeing and belief come together. They are never apart. So what you believe you will see, but also the same, what you see you will believe. So they come together, and they're never apart. And so all the time we're misperceiving ourselves through a place of not knowing, which is really a place of ignorance, forgetfulness. We are miscreating versions of ourselves that aren't true, and because we're believing in that, the world is revealing to us, or we are seeing the effects of our beliefs. But if we come to the realization that we are spiritual beings, and we can actually see ourselves outside the physical as a spiritual being in the reality that we were created in, not the physical reality, because this is much more of a like I say, this is a dreamscape. So when you realize through the meditation that who you are is actually still where you were created to be, and that is really the meaning of heaven. We are created in the mind of God, and we've never left that. We were first conceived and created in the mind of a creator, and we were created like the creator, so our mind is also creative. That's why we are creating a reality that we are experiencing and believing in. But at the moment, we're creating a reality which is much closer to hell than it is to heaven, because we are creating from a place of not knowing. So this morning, once I saw myself out of the body, and I saw that I was actually asleep, I was still sleeping, and I was in heaven, and I could see myself sleeping in heaven, and I could see that I was dreaming, and that this reality that I'm in at the moment was part of that dream. This identity was the figure in that dream. But I was still, the spirit that is me is still in heaven, but sleeping. And so this, we think we're seeing light and everything, but actually, the physical eyes don't see light. They project into darkness, because the physical eyes can only witness to a tiny fraction of the light spectrum. 1 part in 3 trillionths, something like that. So that's not seeing light, that's seeing darkness. We're seeing in the darkness. And because we are light, the spirit is light, and the spirit and light and love are part of oneness, part of the wholeness of creation, and part of the mind of our creator. All the time we're seeing ourselves not there, we're literally seeing ourselves outside of heaven. And this is a place of, obviously, the opposite of heaven is hell. The opposite of love is hatred. So we're creating, or we're miscreating, from a place of seeing ourselves outside of heaven. And even if we look at the world that we are seeing through our eyes, we still see, everything is killing each other. Everything is destroying each other. The animals are killing each other. The plants are all destroying each other. Everything is in the process of being broken down and taken apart. And we're doing the same thing. But we're doing this because we believe it's true. We believe that's what reality is. But when you see yourself in heaven, and you see that actually you're still innocent, you're still there in heaven, and you're innocent, you're completely innocent, and you're just dreaming a nightmarish dream or a frightening dream, then you realize that whatever we're creating here is just a false projection of this fear. That the fear is serving the dream. It keeps us trapped in the dream. It stops us from waking up. It's telling us, the fear is telling us that the dream is real, that this reality is the sum total of reality, and that this body is the sum total of who we are, and everything outside of us, that seems to be outside of us, is fearful because we have no control over it, because it's so much greater and so much powerful than we are. But in truth, this is the illusion, and then if we are still the innocent child of God in heaven, sleeping and dreaming, then that is where our security is, and that is where our strength and our power is. And once we see that we are there, and that we are loved, and we are safe, and that we connect to that power, then the world, the physical world, literally changes form, changes its shape. It reveals to us something that's much closer to heaven. Again, we're still dreaming, so we're not seeing heaven, but we are seeing a reflection of heaven. And even the fact that we do dream at night, when we sleep at night, is but a symbol. That does actually have a symbolic message and a symbolic understanding of reality. But actually, in reality, we fell asleep, or we are sleeping at this moment in time. And our goal is not to prolong the dream, or our function is not to prolong the dream if the dream has turned into a hellish dream, which it has done. And it's nobody's fault. It's just the progression of our waking up. And the closer we come to that waking up period, we're either going to become more fearful, or we're going to become more loving, because we're going to realize those that are operating from or seeing love, it's because they realize that the end of the dream, which is really the death of the body, is not a curse, it's an absolute blessing. We're waking up into heaven, That is not something to be feared, that is something to be rejoiced at. So, seeing yourself as outside of the body, and seeing that you are actually a spiritual being, and you are still where you were created to be, and that is in the mind of God. And that is really the meaning of heaven. The mind of God, which we are part of, is heaven. And if we are seeing ourselves in the mind of God, that means we're also thinking like that, and we are joining our will to the will of God, and so therefore we're creating like God, and the result is that we see ourselves in heaven. And this is the law of the mind, is that you will see what you believe, just like you will believe what you see. And it's the same in heaven as well. You will see what you believe, but in heaven you know who you are, you know yourself, you've not forgotten, you're not sleeping in heaven. It's only when you are sleeping do you not know yourself, and do you forget who you are, and do you have fearful thoughts, because you're confused. We are confused. As human beings, we are in a state of deep confusion at the moment. But this is part of an awakening process. And the more we go inside and we look at the fears and we face them, we don't have to do anything. We don't have to go out and get, for me, it's always around about money, mostly. And at the end of the day, I think for everybody, it's about security. Because money is a form of security in this world. We use it as a form of power and a form of security. Everyone's chasing money or trying to get money because it gives us the feeling of security in a world that is far more powerful than we are. So we are, we feel ourselves victims of the world. But the truth is, the money is just a symbol. The security cannot be found outside, because the outside is part of the illusion that's all being created through our minds, and the body is experiencing this, and we are believing what we're seeing. But when you come into the presence of being, and you realize that you are still who you were created to be, and that you are still completely innocent, and you're still actually in heaven. You haven't left heaven, and there isn't anywhere else to go, in truth, but we're dreaming of another reality that's outside of heaven. And that's why we're suffering, because we're not thinking like God thinks. We're thinking our own thoughts, and because they are coming from a place of not knowing, and they're coming from a place of confusion, they've become fearful. And as this fear becomes more, grows, because we're feeding it and we're believing in it, it grows stronger, and the fear becomes more terrifying, and we become more defensive, and we start hating, and we get angry, and all these kind of attributes of fear, which are really, only found in hell. They're not found in heaven, because the state of heaven is a place of love, a place of abundance, a place of complete security, because nothing can assail the power of God, the power of the Creator. Nothing can overthrow the one being of Creator. This idea of that there is this, that we can, is really the idea of there's a devil that can. That we can't overthrow God, and we can't overthrow heaven. We're not powerful enough to do that, and thankfully so, because if we did, and we would literally be caught in hell forever. But we're not created to be in hell. We are created to be in heaven, and this is the unfolding that's happening at the moment, the realization. And I'm certainly feeling it in myself, because these meditations are becoming more and more profoundly beautiful, and they're showing me another reality, which is non-physical, but what it does is it makes this physical more beautiful, because now I'm seeing more light in the physical. I'm seeing more of my own light, and that is reflecting out into the world. So everyone I meet, I'm just blown away by how beautiful they are, how kind, they always come across so kind and so caring. People are amazing. How they just want to help each other, and they just want to do the best they can, and everyone is trying their best. And even those that we think are bad, or evil, they're doing the best they can at the level that they're at. And if we can see that, then it means that we can see that when we see where we are. So once we see where we are, we then have the realization that's actually where they are. But they are also asleep in heaven, and they are dreaming the same dream that I'm dreaming, and therefore these mistakes that we're making are not to be punished, they're just to be corrected. Mistakes are only mistakes until they're corrected. Once we correct our thinking, and once we correct the way we see ourselves, we will correct the way we see each other, and we will correct the way we see the world, and the world will become much closer to heaven, to the point where the bridge across from earth to heaven is the last step is an easy step. We don't have to do anything. It's given to us, because we're already there. We're already seeing ourselves there. Heaven, hell, like the earth comes to heaven, and at some point they join. Or you might even say, I don't know if they join. Yeah, they join, but all that remains is heaven. But at the moment, we are very much thinking as evil thinks, as you might say the devil thinks. all this attack and all this defense and all these laws that we put on each other, and all the systems that, are, we think they're good for us, and we think we made them for the right reasons, but we only because we was completely confused about who we are. And we literally had, and we still do, we literally had insane rulers. We had insane authority figures, and we still do have insane authority figures. Not that insanity is bad, the person is bad, we're just thinking insanely. And it's not just authority figures that are thinking insanely. We're all thinking insanely until we actually come to that self-realization that we are actually the sons and daughters of God. And therefore we are created in the likeness of our Creator, and we are created beings. And then once that is realized, then we start joining our mind. We realize that our mind is actually joined to the Creator, and we start sharing in those thoughts that a loving Creator would have for his creations. At the moment we're thinking like a devil, we're thinking like an evil, and this is clearly seen in the world, what we're doing to the world, and we're all trying to find different ways of finding happiness here, whether it's through money or possessions or whatever, but all of these trying to do something to make ourselves happy, trying to do something to cover up the fear, trying to do something to hide away from the feelings inside which are terrifying us. That is only happening is because we're believing in the fears and we're not willing to face them. So whoever is suffering at this time and who is going through darkness and going through depression and going through anxiety, whatever it is, psychosis, just keep recognizing that the fear is there to push you deeper into yourself. The suffering that comes from the fear will give you the ability to go deeper into yourself and start realizing who you are. All the time that we are happy in the world, or we're happy in the dream, we're not gonna stop dreaming. And there's nothing wrong in dreaming. Dreaming is an incredible thing. But if the dream has become a nightmare, and the world's dream has become a nightmare, then we have to wake up. We at least have to wake up within the dream. Even if we don't wake up and return back into the reality of heaven, but even if we wake up within the dream, which is really all we have to do, then we transform the dream into a place that's heavenly and not hellish. But we only do that once we've come to the place of self-knowledge inside ourselves. And this is really the wholeness, seeing everything holistically. And it's the meaning of healing. We see everything holistically. We see everything as one because we become part of that oneness. We realize that we are the oneness. The oneness is all around us, it's in us, it's everything. And we are part of it. And once we can see ourselves there, we literally transform, the whole world transforms in front of us. And this is what is happening at the moment. So these meditations have really come about, they've become more profound for me because of the fears. Because when 20 years ago when I stopped working, I didn't have any understanding of where this was going to lead me. But the voice inside me that I kept following, which I always associate with the voice of Jesus, because I've always felt like, even since a child, it was always in my mind. I was always thinking about Jesus, even though I was never religious and I never went to church and I had no intentions of ever going to a church or anything. I always felt like there was this voice inside of me that was speaking, was Jesus. I've always, even when I was doing the shamanic work, it was always the presence of Jesus that seemed to appear and led me through the shamanic work that I was doing for those years. So I didn't know where any of this was going when I stopped working 20 years ago. And the fears started to increase when I obviously I had a family, and I got a wife and a daughter, and my wife doesn't work, and I was the I was the sole breadwinner. I was paying for everything. But as I saw, or I thought I saw, that the money was running out, and yet I was not having any desire to work. In fact, this voice was telling me not to work, but to go into the fears. The fears started increasing because it really felt like, am I going absolutely mad here? I need money, I need to work, but these voices inside my head are telling me not to work, but to go into the fear. Am I going absolutely mad? And for a few years, I really did feel like I was going completely insane. It was a very hellish experience, and it was very dark and very scary. In fact, it was terrifying, and I did go into hell, and that I have no doubt. Not that hell is a place, but it is a place within your mind. It's an extremely insane belief about the self, and it is full of guilt and shame and sadness and hopelessness. There's no hope there. The only thing there is nothing, hellish pain and suffering forever. And that's the hope there. But I kept committed. It felt like my will was just keep going into these fears, and that's what I was doing. And so I would wake up in the morning with these cold sweats and terrors, and then I would sit and meditate, and I would go into the fears, and I would start seeing them for what they are, and start to realize that they are completely associated to the body and to the physical world, that they have no meaning outside of the physicalness of nature or the physicalness of the body. They're completely meaningless, and that their whole purpose is to keep you identified with the body. So in fact, they are an instrument of the fear is literally an instrument of evil. It's an instrument of the ego. It keeps the personality, the identity of the body seemingly real, so that we don't question anything else, and therefore we're always defending ourselves against everything else, trying to protect the body identity. Whether if you are a doctor or something, or an engineer, and your identity is tied up in your PhD or your engineering degree or something, or whatever it is, or your work, and if your identity is tied in with that, the idea of losing that is terrifying. It becomes terrifying, and that's even more so with the body. So the fear always wants to keep you attached to the body and to the body identity. But when you start to see that the fear, that you are not the body, when you start to realize that the fears are actually meaningless to you in reality, they're only meaningful here in this world, in this body experience, in this physicalness. Outside of that, they have no meaning whatsoever. So you have to get to the place of seeing yourself, where you realize that you're not a physical being, you are a spiritual being, and then the fears, they basically just disappear because they have no value to you. We give fears value because we think they're offering us something. I'm scared of that tiger coming to get me because I need to protect my body, or I'm scared of running out of money because I need to protect my body. But all of a sudden, when you realize that you're not the body, there's no need to protect it, because you realize that your mind is doing the body, is doing everything. Not only is the mind doing everything and running the body, but it's running the outside projections as well, which is the environment we see. And then the fears disappear because they have no value to us. And that is really a place of liberation. It's a place of freedom, when you start to see yourself free from all the attachments that the body attachment brings, that the body illusion brings. And that is an incredibly liberating experience. Now, it doesn't last, because the minute you come out of the meditation, the thoughts can remain for a while, but slowly you end up coming back in and attaching yourself to the body, attaching yourself to the world. So it doesn't mean that once you face the fear once, that's it, it's all gone forever. But what it does mean is every time the fear comes, it becomes weaker and it has less power over you. So you're still going to be challenged by stuff in the outside world, because not everyone has woken up, and most people are very much in the process, in kindergarten, process of waking up. We're still on the first run of the ladder kind of thing. It's only maybe when you get to the second or third run of the ladder that, that things really start to shift for you, and the world really kind of changes its meaning and changes its it completely transforms. But all the time we are attached to the body identity, we are fearful, because the body is a place of limitation, and therefore it is a place of weakness, because the being that is the self is eternal and is one with the mind of God, so it is all powerful as well. It has power, it has strength, it has everything, it has abundance, it lacks nothing. So this is why you don't have to go out and get a job and get money, and you don't have to do all these things, because it's just not necessary. Everything was given to us in our creation. When we were created, the whole of heaven was given to us. In fact, from what I understand now, it was given to us because we were created as it. Heaven is us. We are heaven. It's not a place, it's a state of mind, and we are that. Now, when we get to see ourselves there, then we realize that the mind is an instrument of consciousness, and it brings to us everything we need. So I still experience fears about not having enough money, but the minute I've gone inside and I've seen the reality of myself, the fear disappears. And then what happens is miracles happen. Everything that you've asked for, everywhere, and everything that you need, because you only have, we only ask for what we need, unless we are insane and we're always looking for, we need this, we need this, we need this, because we are lost. But once you realize who you are and you know who you are, you only ask for what you need. And for certain, without any doubt, that you're given everything already, and there is nothing beyond the mind's ability to create. And so everything is there for us. We don't have to work for money. We don't have to work for a living. And then all these things kind of snowball. If you're not working for a living and you're not working for money, then you're not paying taxes, and you're not supporting insane governments or insane organizations. And you're not destroying the world. Just keep buying more and more stuff, more handbags, more cars, more this, more that. It becomes a place of absolute healing on every level. It's not just one level. Let's save the world by, reusing plastic bags. That's not going to save the world. Or let's save the world by changing petrol engines into electric cars. That's not going to save the world. And it's not going to save us. The only thing that is going to save us is the realization of who we are, and that is an undoing process, because we've learned everything. We've taught ourselves everything we've learned. We were born into the world in a place of forgetfulness, because we are still in heaven dreaming, and once we fell asleep, we went into the unknown, place of the unknown, and therefore we had to learn everything. We had to teach ourselves. And that's what we've been doing as a humanity. We've been teaching ourselves, and we've learned, and we believe in what we taught ourselves. But because we taught ourselves from a place of not knowing, we've basically been miscreating, and we've taught ourselves poorly. Not anyone's fault, but it is, it was inevitable. If you don't know who you are, then how can you teach what reality is? So we have these universities and these education systems that are teaching what reality is, but it's always from a place of not knowing. Now that doesn't equate to a very sound, solid foundation for ourselves, and this is what we're seeing in the world. We're seeing a very unstable humanity at the moment. completely psychotic. You know, many people, many children especially want to leave. You know, they don't want to be here. It just doesn't make sense. It looks hopeless. This is not a something that we want to be passing on to our children. So, you know, my message is go into the fear. Every fear that comes along, everything that confronts you that is causing you to suffer, whether doubts or fear or judgment or anger. If you know, for me, I find I struggle with bureaucracy and government organizations, but what I realize is when I go into the fear and I answer it from there, then every time I have to interact with somebody from that organization, it is always such an amazing experience, and they always doing the best they can to help. And this is like such a transformative experience, because then you realize that everybody at every level is doing the best they can, and they are loving, beautiful beings. And this is what's going to save us in this world, when we come together as a unity, as a wholeness. You know, if you think about governments and organizations and banking and all these things, all these symbols are all symbols of separation. They're all trying to separate and keep everything apart, the rich from the poor, those who have from those who have not. The nations, you know, one country and another country, everyone is separate. The police is always trying to keep everyone apart because of the laws, you know, the laws that are held against everybody. You know, this isn't leading to health. This is leading to more insanity. And all this stuff can be addressed so simply when you realize who you are and have that self-realization experience. And therefore, then what happens is you stop believing in all the other stuff. It becomes meaningless. And that is the undoing process. Because once you stop believing in it, you will stop seeing it. And once you stop seeing it, it will no longer be in this world. It will disappear completely. And what will come to take its place will be the truth and the light that is in our minds already, that is the light of our true self already. And the knowledge of who we are will come to fill in the area of space that was left vacant when all the illusions disappeared.